How's it going, YouTube? GlazedAndConfused here, bringing you another deck profile. Today we're going to be going over a newer archetype called Shiranui's, and this is basically another one of those decks that revolves around summoning zombies from the graveyard in order to go for big synchro, exceeds, and even a fusion play in this deck. So let's get into it. So first off, we're playing 3 Shiranui Samurai. This card is going to be basically your Shiranui beater. It has 1800 attack points, and you'll notice very quickly that almost all monsters in this deck have 0 defense, so it's a very offensively oriented archetype. And what Shiranuis are based around are banishing themselves from the graveyard and having effects that either banish said cards or that trigger when they are banished. So for example, Shiranui Samurai allows you to banish a zombie-type monster in your graveyard in order to give it an attack boost. And also, when it's banished from the graveyard itself, you can target a Shiranui in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So you're basically recycling with this card, and you're able to get off major plays by using its effect by boosting its attack. We play 2 Shiranui Spiritmaster, as it's called in the TCG. You'll see that these are the OCG names. I'm going to try and call them by their TCG names so it's easier for you guys to look up. When it's normal summoned, you can special summon a Shiranui monster from your hand or graveyard, but its better effect is when it's banished from the graveyard, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it. So, for instance, it's the first turn, you're able to have your Spiritmaster in the grave, and you summon your Samurai. You summon your Samurai, banish the Spiritmaster, destroy an opponent's monster, and then you have a direct attack coming your opponent's way with a 2400 attack point monster. That's a very, very cool combo that you can pull off very consistently in this deck. Next, we have Shiranui Spectralsword. This is your Shiranui tuner in this deck. This is going to allow you to go into your major synchro zombie plays. This card can, if you guys are familiar with Blackwings, this card is very similar to Vayu, the Emblem of Honor. You can target one non-tuner zombie-type monster in your graveyard and this card, and then you can special summon a zombie-type synchro monster from your extra deck whose level. So it's like you're synchro summoning from the graveyard, which is extremely cool and a great mechanic in this deck. Because not only are you able to use destroyed cards as the material, but you also get whatever you banished effect. So it could be your Spiritmaster, it could be your Samurai, it could be any card in this deck. Also, because it's a special summon and not a synchro summon, that means that you can use cards like Archfiend Zombie-Skull, who require Plague Spreader Zombie to summon them, which is a case for a lot of the zombie synchro type monsters. On to Shiranui Smith. This card I only play one of. I like it, but it can be dead sometimes, so I only play one of it. It needs to be sent to the field, from the field to the graveyard as synchro material, which in some duels that might not happen. But also when it's banished, that turn, zombie-type monsters cannot be destroyed by battle, and that can be helpful. For example, Shiranui Samurai can activate its effect on either player's turn. If you know it's going to get destroyed, you can boost its attack. If it's still going to get it destroyed, you can use Smith's effect and prevent it from being destroyed, and you'll have it for next turn. Next, we have I think it's the only OCG exclusive in this entire deck. That's why I have the online version at least. It's not budget, it's not TCG only. We have Shiranui Sage. Now, I'm only playing him at 1 because I'm not sure how much I like him yet. Some duels I like him, some duels I don't. What he does, he's a very quick way to get your Spectral Sword out. By tributing a zombie-type monster, you can special summon a zombie-type tuner. But when it's banished, I think this is the better effect. You can target a banished Shiranui and then special summon it, but if you activate it while the field spell is on the field, you can target 2 monsters. So it can come in handy sometimes, but because it has such mediocre stats, there have been times where you'd rather draw into even like a Goblin Zombie or just something that can have some sort of value on the field. But there have been times when this card has saved me, so I recommend you give it a try at least 1. If you like it, bump it up to 2. I think 3 might be too much, so I'm going to keep it at 1 for now, but I'll probably revisit this with an updated deck profile, maybe a budget version if you guys are down for that. So we'll see how that goes. Next we have 2 Zombie Master, which is pretty much key in any zombie deck. Next we have 2 Tristan, Knight of the Underworld, and like I said, almost every card in this deck has 0 defense points, so it's going to be very easy for Tristan to get its effect off. And it has 2100 attack when there's another zombie on the field, so that's pretty good. We also play 1 Isolde, Belle of the Underworld. This is a good swarm card if you have Tristan out, but you can also target 2 zombies and declare level 5 to 8, and then they become that level, which helps you go for a card like number 23. 3 Mezuki, which is self-explanatory in zombie decks, one of the few monsters that has defense points in this deck, but this is going to be a card that helps you swarm, and another card that has another zombie monster that has an effect that benefits from it being banished, so there's that. 2 Goblin Zombie, which we don't really use for the first effect, but we use for the second effect. When this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, add 1 zombie type monster with 1200 or less defense from your deck to your hand. And if you weren't paying attention, that's every single card in this deck. So it's basically a free card from your deck to your hand. And 3 Uni-Zombie, which can send 2 cards per turn to the graveyard, which in this deck, if you can set your graveyard up right, with a good balance of Shiranui cards and cards that can special summon themselves, your opponent is going to have a rough time getting through that. And it's also a tuner that can boost his own level. So onto the spells, we have 2 Book of Life, which is pretty self-explanatory in a zombie deck, just to help you special summon. 1 Soul Charge, because there's going to be a lot of cards in the graveyard consistently, and oftentimes you'll need to help yourself recover if one of your big plays doesn't go off. 1 Gold Sarc, and this is one of the first times I've been playing Gold Sarc since it kind of fell off in use. But when you banish 1 card from your deck, that effect goes off. So if you're banishing your Spiritmaster, that's a free way to destroy one of your opponent's monsters. Great effect. 1 Foolish Burial, pretty self-explanatory. Twin Twister. If you're going to play 2 Twin Twister, you could probably play 3 in this deck, but I like to keep it at 2. Not only can it destroy back row, which an OTK deck like this really just despises, but you can also discard a card, which if it's like a Mezuki or a Shiranui monster, they're going to get effects in the graveyard. So it helps on both fronts. 1 Burial from a Different Dimension. Pretty self-explanatory in this deck as well. A lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. Once you start playing the deck, you'll understand how it works. This is just to help you recover. You could also use cards like Miracle Dig if you don't think 1 of these cards is enough. 1 Jewels of the Valiant. If exactly 1 monster is banished from your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can send from your deck to the graveyard 1 monster that has a different attribute from that banished monster. There's 3 different attributes in this deck that you can work with, so Jewels of the Valiant is an extremely helpful card in this deck, and I highly recommend you play it. A lot of people may not know what this card is, which is why I read the effect. 2 Shiranui Style Synthesis. This is the field spell that will allow you to set your plays up for Shiranuis. You can send a card from your hand to the graveyard to trigger their effects. You can either summon a monster from the graveyard or target a banished monster and bring it back to the graveyard. 1 Dragon's Mirror, which we'll get into in a second for that 1 fusion monster you might see in the extra deck. And now onto the traps. 3 Shiranui Style Swallow's Slash. That's a tough card to say. This is basically Icarus attack for zombies. And not only that, but you can also banish a Shiranui monster from your deck and get its effect. This card is an absolute amazing addition to this deck. And you have to play it at least 2, I think, but I play it 3. 1 Bottomless, it's a staple. I'm playing 1 Quaking Mirror Force, and that's because I really do like this card, this format. Destroying monsters, like even in this deck, if you destroy a field full of Shiranui monsters, that could come back to bite you. So I'm playing 1 Quaking Mirror Force because it lets you destroy monsters at your own pace by switching everything to face down defense mode and keeping it there so your opponent can't use it. It basically lets you take your time destroying what you want. I think I really do like this card, this format, and I might even bump this up to 2 if I continue to enjoy it as much as I have. And lastly, 1 Compulse, which is just a staple. So let's get on to the extra deck, which is a good mix of Fusion Xyz and Synchro. Starting off with Dragonecro Nethersoul Dragon. This is a card I've never used before until this deck, and this card can be kind of your boss monster in this deck. I'll read off the major effect for you if you've never seen this card. Monsters cannot be destroyed by battle with this card, and at the end of the damage step, if it battled a monster that has an original level, so not an Xyz monster, that monster's attack becomes 0. And if that monster is still face up on the field, special summon 1 Dark Soul token, and it has its level and attack become equal to the original level and attack of the monster it battled. So basically, you're making your opponent's monster useless and summoning a copy of that monster to your side of the field. That can be devastating. Plus, when you summon it with Dragon's Mirror, you're banishing cards from your graveyard, which, if you've paid attention to the deck so far, you can see how that would be helpful. Onto the Synchro monsters, we have 2 of the Shiranui boss monster, which is Shogunsaga. Shiranui Shogunsaga is basically your OTK card in this deck. When it's summoned, you banish a zombie-type monster from your graveyard, and this card gains attack equal to that banished monster's original attack until the end of the turn. So not only are you getting the effects of the monster you banished, but it has a major attack boost. And then if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target one of your banished zombie types with 0 defense and return it to the graveyard, so it helps you recycle. Not only that, but this card doesn't have restrictions on whether it can be special summoned from the graveyard or not, which means Book of Life can summon it, Mezuki can summon it. A lot of cards in this deck can bring this card right back out, and its effect will trigger again. It's not when it's synchro summoned, it's when it's special summoned. 2 PSY-Framelord Omega, and it's extremely helpful just to have that every turn, getting your Shiranuis back into the grave as quickly as you can. Plus, a level 8 synchro monster is very easy to summon in this deck. PSY-Framelord Omega can really help push this deck into another gear. Onto 2 staples, it's Stardust and Black Rose. Stardust for protection, Black Rose for nuking the board. 2 Archfiend Zombie-Skull, which, like I said earlier, can be summoned using Shiranui Spectralsword, but because it's a level 6, by banishing, let's say, your Shiranui Samurai and your Shiranui Spectralsword, you can just play your Archfiend Zombie-Skull. This card can shut opponents' decks down. Face-up zombie-type monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. 2 Shiranui Samuraisaga. Once per turn during either player's turn, you can target one of your banished zombie-type monsters and shuffle it into the deck. And then if you do, change all monsters your opponent controls with attack lower than or equal to that monster's attack points to defense position. If it's banished, you can target a monster your opponent controls and it loses 500 attack. That might not seem like a lot, but if you're banishing this card using Shogun's effect, this card has 5,500 attack after that, and your opponent's monster loses 500. That's huge. And 1 Revived King Hades, which can be helpful if you're destroying monsters that have their effects activate upon destruction. And onto the Xyz monsters, playing 1 101 and 1 Abyss Dweller. And last but not least, number 23, Lancelot, Ghost Knight of the Underworld. Like I said, if you're playing budget, I think this card's pretty expensive because it was some sort of promo. So you could take it out for something else. But this card is a great way to finish off a game. It can attack directly while it has Xyz material, and when it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target a face-up monster they control and destroy that. And then once per turn during either player's turn, when a spell or trap or another monster effect is activated, you can detach and negate the activation. This card is absolutely fantastic. It's kind of hard to bring out in a normal deck, but in this deck, it's pretty simple. As long as you have Tristan and Isolde on the field, or Isolde and another zombie, that works too. And you can just bring out Lancelot. And a lot of decks will pretty much fold that at that point. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this deck. I would really recommend you guys give this one a shot. It's a ton of fun, and no 2 duels with this deck are the same. I'll probably do an update at some point with the in real life deck. I do have a budget version of this deck, so if you guys are at all interested in seeing that, let me know. But like I said, try this deck out. It's a ton of fun, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.